Hello and welcome back to my blog. I found a book here, A Guide to Health by Mahatma Gandhi, no less. So I thought I'd read some of this. I don't know if I'll read all of it. I know I'll skip some of it. Here's the contents. Translator's note. Part 1, General. The meaning of health. The human body. Air. Water. Food. How much and how many times should we eat? Exercise, dress, sexual relations. Part 2, some simple treatments. Air treatment, water cure, the use of earth, fever and its cures, constipation, dysentery, etc. Contagious diseases, smallpox, other contagious diseases, maternity and childbirth, care of child, accidents, drowning, burns and scalds, snake bite, scorpion sting, etc. Conclusion. Translator's note. In these days, this is from 1921, by Mahatma Gandhi, translated from the Hindi by A. Rama Iyer, M.A., 1921. Translator's note. In these days when the name of Mahatma Gandhi is identified with the momentous question of non-cooperation, it may come with a shock of surprise to most readers to be told that he is something of an authority on matters of health and disease as well. Very few of us, perhaps, are aware that he is the author of quite an original little health book in Gujarati. Those who think of him as a dreamy idealist or an unpractical visionary, with his head always in the clouds, will certainly be undeceived when they read this book, replete from cover to cover with practical observations on the most practical question of health. His views are, of course, radically different from the ordinary views that find expression in the pages of such books. In many cases, indeed, his doctrines must be pronounced revolutionary and will doubtless be regarded by a certain class of readers as wholly impracticable. Even the most revolutionary of his doctrines, however, are based not on the shifting quicksands of mere theory, but on the solid foundation of deep study backed up by personal experience of nearly 30 years. He himself recognizes that many of his views will hardly be accepted by the ordinary reader, but he has felt himself impelled by a stern sense of duty to give publicity to his convictions formed after so much of study and experience. Some, at least, however, of those who read his book cannot help being profoundly influenced by it. Such, at any rate, has been the case with me, and I have ventured to translate the book into English in the hope that others may also be benefited likewise. I should perhaps explain that I am not a student of Gujarati, the language of the original. I have used instead one of the two Hindi versions of the book. I should also point out that I have not attempted a literal or close translation, but only a very free rendering into English. In some cases, whole passages have been omitted, and occasionally only the general sense of a passage has been given. It is hoped, however, that in no single instance has there been a misinterpretation of the original words. I am aware that many errors might have crept in, as the translation had to be done in a hurry, and there was hardly any time for revision. I hope to make a thorough revision of the book in case a second edition is called for. National College, Trichinopoly, A. Rama Iyer. Introduction, Part 1. I split the introduction into two parts. July 1921. For more than 20 years past, I have been paying special attention to the question of health. While in England, I had to make my own arrangements for food and drink, and I can say, therefore, that my experience is quite reliable. I have arrived at certain definite conclusions from that experience, and I now set them down for the benefit of my readers. As the familiar saying goes, prevention is better than cure. It is far easier and safer to prevent illness by the observance of the laws of health than to set about curing the illness which has been brought on by our own ignorance and carelessness. Hence, it is the duty of all thoughtful men to understand aright the laws of health, and the object of the following pages is to give an account of these laws. We shall also consider the best methods of cure for some of the most common diseases. As Milton says, the mind can make a hell of heaven or a heaven of hell. So heaven is not somewhere above the clouds and hell somewhere under the earth. We have this same idea expressed in the Sanskrit saying, Mana eva manchu ana karanam banda makshayo, whatever. Man's captivity or freedom is dependent on the state of his mind. From this it follows that whether a man is healthy or unhealthy depends on himself. Illness is the result not only of our actions but also of our thoughts. As has been said by a famous doctor, more people die for fear of diseases like smallpox, cholera, and plague than out of those diseases themselves. Ignorance is one of the root causes of disease. Very often we get bewildered at the most ordinary diseases out of sheer ignorance, and in our anxiety to get better, we simply make matters worse. Our ignorance of the most elementary laws of health leads us to adopt wrong remedies or drives us into the hands of the veriest quacks. How strange, and yet how true it is that we know much less about things near at hand than things at a distance. We know hardly anything of our own village, but we can give by rote the names of the rivers and mountains of England. We take so much trouble to learn the names of the stars in the sky while we hardly think it worthwhile to know the things that are in our own homes. We never care a jot for the splendid pageantry of nature before our very eyes while we are so anxious to witness the puerile mummeries of the theater. And in the same way, we are not ashamed to be ignorant of the structure of our body, of the way in which the bones and muscles grow, how the blood circulates and is rendered impure, how we are affected by evil thoughts and passions, how our mind travels over illimitable spaces and times while the body is at rest, and so on. There is nothing so closely connected with us as our body. But there's also nothing perhaps of which our ignorance is so profound or our indifference so complete. We'll finish the introduction tomorrow. I hope this turns out to be a worthwhile read. We'll see over the next few days. Make it a great day, and bye for now.